Welcome to the Delight Your Marriage podcast, the show where you hear from amazing and inspiring wives sharing their struggles, triumphs, and advice for this journey called marriage. Here's your host, Bella Rose.
Hey there, welcome. I am so grateful that you are joining me. Thank you. This is part 2 of my conversation with my husband on how to be easygoing. Now, a lot of people would talk about easygoing as though it were a personality trait, but I think it's actually a developed characteristic of your marriage. And it was interesting because in reading my Bible this morning, I happened upon a chunk of verses actually, that I was very surprised I hadn't read before. So, or at least not recently. It didn't ring a bell. You know, who knows? Maybe I've read it before, but let me read it to you. It's 1 Corinthians 7:12. Now, I can't interpret all of this for you. I really don't understand it that well, but it's in the Bible, and there's certainly, the more I'm aware of how languages work, and I'm definitely a fan of all sorts of languages and ethnicities and cultures around the world. It's amazing how God has created and uniquely designed each of them. But what I am interested in is how there's actually different meanings in each language, and there's actually different words that don't fully or easily or nicely translate into other languages. For example, the word to know in English has 2 different words in Spanish. So conocer means to know, like I know a person, and saber is to know, like I know how to do something. So anyway, those are some things. Just a little quiz on my memory around Spanish, but I'm actually going to start practicing on that again. You can keep me accountable. All right, so 1 Corinthians 7:12. I said all that about language to say that some of this may be lost in translation. Maybe some of the ways that we understand the Hebrew or the Greek, you might scratch your head and be like, what does that mean? Well, maybe there's some Bible study that needs to be done around what it specifically means. But something I think is going to be really helpful as I encourage you guys in the easygoing aspect here. So 1 Corinthians 7:12, to the rest I say, I, not the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. If any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean. Now, that's the part I'm confused about. But then it says, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God calls you to peace. So this is really, really key. It basically is saying that it's better to not rock the boat about your religion with your spouse because God calls you to peace. I think that's a really good insight for anyone listening that has an unbelieving spouse, because it's like, come on, guys, peace. I mean, that's what's ultimately going to encourage your husband or encourage your wife towards Jesus, is a really wonderful marriage that fulfills them and loves them and encourages them. It's not going to be so fun married to the mean guy that's trying to make you feel bad about yourself. That's not going to make her want to love Jesus. Or if she is wanting him to be the spiritual leader, quote unquote, it's going to be a lot easier for him to lead if you're not jumping down his throat on all the things that he's doing wrong. So I encourage you to choose peace. God has called us to peace. God has called us aka to be easygoing in our marriages. And then it continues, for how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him and to which God has called him. I think that's so powerful. Once again, God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Only let each lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him and to which God has called him. So essentially, you're responsible for your own salvation, your own connection and walk with God, and be at peace with your spouse. That's the cultivating space that they can have a relationship with God. If they're constantly stressed and arguing with you, even if it's about spiritual matters and all this kind of stuff, I don't know if that's going to bring them closer to Jesus or not. I mean, if it were me, I wouldn't. It's too hard. So I want to challenge you in that. And then I want to invite you to listen to the second half of my conversation with my husband. Again, this was not easy for me. I was not easygoing in the least. In the least. Oh my gosh, our schedules, our lives were jam-packed. Mine was jam-packed with productivity. I'm still a woman that loves goals. Oh my goodness. Every quarter I am focused. I have my specific goals every quarter. But you know what? The midst of that, I'm a person who schedules a day every single week for rest and rejuvenation with her family. And by God's grace now, I have the opportunity to even schedule a day that's specifically about spiritual rejuvenation, where it's me getting alone with Jesus. Because if I don't have that opportunity to do that, and I'm considered a leader in the way I walk with you on this podcast, or if you walk with me personally in my coaching or my programs, I could be walking in the wrong direction because I don't have a personal relationship with Jesus. How am I supposed to help you if I can't walk with him first and foremost? So hopefully that's a little insight and encouragement that your relationship with God comes first. Then it's your spouse. And I want to encourage you that you don't have to change him. Right? Didn't it say that? Only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him and to which God has called him. Right? Just a couple, 2 sentences away, it says, God has called you to peace. So I hope you open your heart as you listen to this second part of the conversation. I think it's really good and it'll encourage you.
And I feel like if we focus more on the positive things that what God has blessed in us, and I feel like that you start seeing the beauty around you, just walking on the street, like you get to see it, that you get to see it, that a lot of people can't see it, that you get to hear it, that you get to hear that a lot of people cannot hear it, that they wish they can hear what you're saying, but they cannot hear it, that you can smell, that you can speak, that you can touch, that you feel that some people that they lost the touching feeling, they can't, or some people that they grew up, they was born without parts of their bodies, and I feel like there's a struggle, but they don't complain, and then we have all our bodies, hands, our feet that we can walk, that we can put our shoes on. There are a lot of people in this world that don't have shoes on. That you have food on the table. That a lot of people don't have food on their tables, if they had tables. But I feel like we're not aware of those things. Like I gotta say openly to this, right? We're talking about, like, I go to Bible studies sometimes, and they talk about the sock, like the socks that they wear them. Sometimes they get loose. And all the socks, they go on the bottom because they can't get it.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay.
Sounds funny.
And I just started laughing, right? And then because I share my stories, and then the people started laughing. And I'm like, they started laughing. And I'm like, what do you think about that? I said, do you really want me to think about, since we're friends, right? I say, don't make people feel uncomfortable. But man, if I had the shoes, what you have right now, if I had those, I'd just be so grateful that I had those shoes that you have. Forget about the socks, complaining about socks. It's not like complaining. It's just a kind of joke. But just kind of maybe awareness about, like, aren't you grateful that you had those kind of shoes? Yes, you can pay because you got a good job. You can pay for that. But just think about it for a moment. Not everybody get to enjoy those things, and sometimes, like, people, they say that they get out a lot of positive things because the things that I share, that they will never heard, or they will never experience, and they come to me and they ask me, like, hey, how, I don't understand why you say those things, but it opened my mind so much that I'm helping other people or be aware of those.
Yeah. Well, do you mind if
No, go ahead.
I gotta thank you, honey. That was amazing, and I hope people get a chance to go back and have some notes, because my husband went through so many different things in there that I feel like you can learn from. And I think he and I are going to talk about if this is okay to share, but I'm jotting down the number right here. So if we need to go back and delete it, we will. But I feel like it's really important for you to know. When I was in college, I gave a speech at my school. And after the speech, one of the women that was organizing the whole event, one thing when she found out more about my story, that I worked 3 jobs while I was full-time in school and things like that, and some of the challenges that I had while I was in school, she was like, why didn't you share that in your speech? That's the story. That's what we want to hear. So sometimes I feel like on this podcast, it's easy to share a bunch of keys and tools for success rather than share something about yourself that actually is going to be the inspiration to help someone to change. And so this is the reason I want to share this, is that my husband and I both have a background of, him more so than me, but of a background of lack. Something that he was just alluding to a minute ago, of people a lot of times want to give their kids more than they had. But, for both my husband and I, we grew up either without electricity, without, financial good things. We had a lot of physical labor on farmlands, and didn't have new clothes. I never went shopping for new clothes my whole life. I think we went to... I think it might have been middle school was the first time I ever bought a new piece of clothing. And then something along the lines of maybe once a year at the most, maybe less than that, did we go out to eat. So those were just some of, like, things that I think as Americans we take for granted as normal. But doing your homework by lantern light because we don't have electricity, and washing your dishes in the creek is kind of unique in the U.S. So anyway, I just feel like stuff like that is helpful for you guys to hear, because when you have less, you see things better. You have more gratitude. But how much more so should we have gratitude as, in whoever you are listening? If you're able to hear my voice, you have insanely amount of good things of whether it's material possessions or wherever. The fact that you can just hear my voice means that you have technology, you have the ability to listen wherever you are in the world. So thinking about that is enough to be extremely grateful. There's billions of people that don't have what you have. So that's not something to walk around and ignore because you don't want to feel guilty. Instead, walk around with the gratitude that God has given you a gift. And there's purposes behind that. There's purposes that you have been given that gift. One of the things I love about my husband and always have, and that was one of the reasons I fell in love with him in the beginning, as you can tell, the amount of, how do I describe it? He does not feel like he deserves what he has. He feels very grateful for everything that he has because he hasn't had those things. He hasn't had food on his table. He hasn't had shoes on his feet. He knows what that is like. So when I know him, I get to live with someone who knows what it's like to not have those things. And so his gratitude is so extreme that I get to be blessed by it every day. And so I encourage you can still have that level of gratitude developed. That's every good and perfect gift comes from above. We don't deserve anything we've been given, nothing, and much less the precious blood of Jesus. So I just encourage you, regardless of where we thought we were going to start with this podcast, for us to think most importantly about if we're not grateful for what God has given us, what are we doing here? That's the gospel. That's the good news, is our gratitude for Jesus, our gratitude for the life he's given us, our gratitude to then respond in holiness and in holy worship to him, right? In our pursuit of holiness in our lives, that we would do his work and his life here. So the gratefulness, the gratitude is such a huge, huge part of our relationship together and our relationship pursuing God together. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. Just like you said, because if some things when we grow up and things that we didn't have, and now as an adult, like if you be aware of that, you'll be more grateful, or be grateful what you have, and always give the glory to God. I feel like because without him, I am nobody. I am nobody. I'm just. I feel like I was lost, and somebody on the review, I can't help it, that they said that they listen why this is why the reason they listen to Bella is because she always give the credit to God. And I agree with you that she always put her God first, because we cannot do everything by ourselves. Oh, I'm starting crying. I mean, I'm telling you, you always put him first in your life, and then he take care of the rest. And one thing that it's just like if we he's the one who created the whole thing, and just think about, he created your wife, that beautiful woman that you had on your side, that beautiful children, if you had children that you didn't have on this world, now they're walking on this earth, for them to be the blessing of this world, for that beautiful woman that you have on your side, walking at your side, to go anywhere you go, she always by your side. Husbands, you gotta be humble and stop demanding, because we all have needs. We all have desires, the same as wives. The people that husbands and wives that work with my wife. Um, you know, like my wife is like, praise God that this marriage is being transformed, and not just for her and for him and for his family, for his friends, that they can see that place where they live is safe. So just I don't know, I will start crying because I feel like we always have to put our God first. If we don't, if we can do temporary everything by ourselves, but I'll guarantee that you'll crash, and then you're not gonna like it when that happens. You're not gonna like it when it happens. It happens to me, and thank you for listening. Thank you, husbands that are working with Bella, that you're in a good hands. You will and start realizing a lot of things that we need to change. Wives of these husbands that are working with Bella, that your husband is trying to do the best that he can to love you more. He is trying to find other ways to love you, to respect you, to honor you even more. So I thank you, husbands. Thank you, fathers, brothers, friends, and sons. I thank you so much for finding the ways how to love your wife, and wives. Thank you so much for trying to find other ways to love your husbands. And if you can tell your husband to let him know that you're doing the best that you can to love him even more. I thank you so much for making that step. Thank you so much. And if I can speak the next time, I would like to speak about sexual harassment through kids, because I feel comfortable now to share some things what happened in my childhood. I feel like there's a higher percentage that all of us went through. If not, we know someone, but you will never know that someone because it's afraid or embarrassed to share. I hope I'll share the next time when I'm speaking to you about what happened. And if you can prevent that with your children, aren't we lucky that God gave his only son, Jesus Christ, to die for us? What will you do for your son or your daughter? What will you do? What will you do?
Oh man, that's awesome. Thank you, honey. So I think I'd like to do a episode where we, my husband just mentioned that to talk about sexual harassment, sexual abuse in kids, and then maybe the following one we'll talk again about, because I have my 15 more points about how to be easygoing in your marriage.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm easygoing, honey. I'll be flexible.
That's what happens when I get inspired from my wife.
At our wedding, because I can't help but talk, I planned a speech, and my shy, wonderful husband got inspired, and he gave a speech afterwards. I think his was longer and much better.
I don't know about better, but it was longer. And I feel like my wife knows that when I get it in the moment, and then she makes me feel comfortable, and then I just start speaking nonstop. And because she has these notes about what she wants to talk about, and then I get inspired. The amazing things that she won't stop. She won't say like, "Okay, honey, that's too much." She just let me keep speaking.
Well, it's because your heart just
Ah,
starts pouring out, and what's in your heart is what people need to see and hear, and we can all grow from. So um, it's powerful. No matter what you say, it's powerful. So
thank
thank you.
you.
Awesome. So I hope this has been insightful, inspiring, just fun, something that has made you giggle a little bit or relaxed a little bit. Um, Listen, if you want a marriage like that, it's not out of your reach. It is not out of your grasp. By God's incredible grace, I have witnessed people go from strife and anger, resentment, bitterness to joy, happiness. They say their marriage is surreal. They can't even remember the last time they fought. Like, that's something you can learn, but it's not something that's just going to happen all by itself. So I want to invite you to a clarity call. This is a conversation that I have directly with you where you'd get on the call, you'd do a short survey for me first so I can be prepared, so we'll get the most value out of the call as possible. And we'll get clear, you'll get clear on what's really going on in your situation. And I'll ask you a ton of questions to really help you see what's underneath the pain and the heartache, and maybe some of the causes, maybe just the root stuff that is hard to see when you're just in it. I've been there. It's extremely, extremely difficult. And maybe you just also need a listening ear. Sometimes women and men come on those calls and they have never told anyone what they've told me. And I'm very honored. And the bravery that they showed getting on the call, being vulnerable with me. And if I feel like you're a good fit, if I feel like I can actually help you, I may invite you and to either work with me, join a program, something along the lines. But I really don't do that unless I have a strong conviction. We both discern that that's where God wants us to go together. So this clarity call, either way, you're going to get great value from it. To sign up, it is a $500 value, but I am doing it for free at this time. That's really my gift to you, and it's an opportunity, again, that I'm honored that you share your story with me. So you can go to dym.as.me. So www.dym.as.me. And I really encourage you to do that as soon as you can, because I have limited space available. And it's one of those things that once one day is taken up, I have kind of limited days that I can even do it. So as soon as you can, book a call with me, and who knows what God is really looking to transform in your marriage, that you could be excited to come home and have fun with your spouse and do God's work better in this world because of the relationship that you guys have together. God bless you. And I look forward to chatting with you again next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you've been blessed by this, why not share it? Until next time, live with love, wisdom, and passion.